Welcome, Automation Nation followers. I have a great guest that I'm super excited about today, Dave Harner. Harner. He's the director of golf operations at French Lick Resort. He's a longtime PGA member, and French Lick has been around since 1917. He oversees the operations over there, including the restaurants and the courses. But Dave, no one can introduce themselves likely better than you can. Did I miss anything? Is there anything you want me to add? I'm sure there's a lot, but
When you said I've been around a long time, that pretty much covers it. I've been an employee of the resort here for 45 years. So, I've seen the resort at its worst and I've seen it now at its best. So, I feel really privileged to be here and to be able to see this end.
So when did you start golfing? I mean, when were you introduced to golf?
I started working here in 1976. My father was a factory worker over in a neighboring town. I didn't go to college, couldn't afford college. Walked in the human resources office in August of 1976, and the lady there said, "Well, we have a lot of college kids going back to school. I've got two jobs. One is a dishwasher, and the other one is at the golf course as a cart attendant / bag room attendant, or whatever else we need you to do." So she said, "Do you know anything about golf?" And I said, "Well, my grandfather plays and I go along." I sort of tag along. She said, "Well, golf's probably a good place." And I thank God every day for that, because I still can't load the dishwasher to suit my wife. So I'm glad I picked golf.
Well, so not to get on the dishwasher thing, but I even think for me with the dishwasher, even when I do load it, it's never to their expectation or anyway. So they just end up doing it themselves. No matter if you figure it out or not, they're always going to do it better, I think.
100%.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So I think that's actually really cool how you got in the game. So are you probably more in love with the operations of golf or the game of golf then? Like, I mean, since you got into it on a lot of times I talk to people and they got into it because they played in college or whatever. You are somebody that got into it at the ground level as a probably the lowest level golf worker, and then worked your way up, obviously. So this is going to be an interesting.
I folded a lot more shirts than I made birdies. I can tell you that.
That's
was
awesome.
lucky to pass my PGA PAT. I had at one time a decent game. Never was a great player, never a tournament player, but my passion was operations, guest service, merchandising was a big one for me. Fortunately or unfortunately, I worked for a couple of pros who were far along in their career and didn't really grab onto the merchandising side or any of that. So I was pretty much the guy that helped them with that and carried the load for them late in their careers in operations and in merchandising. So that's kind of where I came from. I didn't play golf until I was 20 years old. And the first lesson I had, the pro told me I should lay off a couple of weeks and then quit. But I didn't.
So you said you've been around to see the course at its best and its worst. To you, how do you identify the best and the worst, right? I mean, because your perspective of that.
Well, a little background. I had worked for 7 different owners here, about 8 or 9 management companies, and probably 30 general managers. And most of them were always bottom line driven. We sacrificed a lot of course condition to make the number work. And, operationally, I had there was a time when I was running 2 golf courses and didn't have an assistant golf professional at all. It was me and some shop clerks, some retirees. And I know there are a lot of people still doing that, and you got to hand it to them. Their passion for the business is what keeps them going. And that's kind of what it was with me. My passion for the game and for the business kept me going. And then things started to turn around in 2003 when we were granted a riverboat gaming license here at the resort. And through many twists and turns, wound up with a great owner, Bill Cook and the Cook Medical folks own the resort and put about $600 million in it. So I was able to see the dream come true. The things that I had always talked about and dreamed about became a reality. Building the die course was one of those things. and having two top level championship courses was the other. We have a 9-hole course also, and it's a great little golf course. But to have the number 1 and 2 ranked public golf course in the state, sort of the topping on the cake, so to speak.
So $600 million, that is quite an investment in that operation.
I say there was nothing wrong with French Lick Resort that 600 million wouldn't fix.
Yeah, money, especially when it comes to a facelift like that, can often do that type of thing. So in that renovation, I mean, you said the course and the stuff you did, but for people listening that wouldn't understand golf and what goes into it, what did 600 million, where did that get kind of spread out? If you wouldn't mind maybe unfolding that a little bit. We don't have to get too deep into it, but is it redesigning the course, redoing it? Is it, where does it go?
Well, the 600 million is resort property wide and includes golf. There's about a $40 million commitment to golf in there. The Dye course somewhere in the $28 million range to build. The renovation of the Donald Ross course somewhere around $7.5 million. The clubhouse renovations, it all amounted to about $40 million. The rest of it was spent on the construction of the casino and the renovation of the French Lick Springs Hotel and the West Baden Springs Hotel. The West Baden Springs Hotel hadn't been open as a hotel since 1932. And up until the Astrodome was built, it was the world's largest self-supporting dome at just a little over an acre inside the atrium. So special building, but had fallen into disrepair. 60 rooms had fallen off the side of the building. You couldn't really even get in there because the brush and the road and all that were so in such disrepair. So Mr. Cook was out for a drive one Sunday afternoon, and he had a passion for old buildings, drove in there and saw it, wanted to be involved. He got first involved through Historic Landmarks of Indiana. Then the casino talks began, and I was fortunate. I was a town council member and a member, and was on the negotiating team to bring in the casino. And we awarded our first casino contract to Donald Trump. And about 3 or 4 weeks after Donald Trump was granted the license, he filed bankruptcy on his gaming entities. And it was the longest year of my life. We had no operator. We had no commitment. And finally, the governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, gave Trump the ultimatum to get it done, or we were going to find another operator. And fortunately, the Cook stepped up, bought the French Lick Springs Hotel, built the casino, formed their own gaming company, and the rest is history.
Amazing story. I can't help but to think of like the building that you're talking about, the 1 acre dome, like an old like Coliseum, just kind of falling apart, and you guys like kind of fixing it up and cleaning it up. That's awesome. So what would you say is probably the main attraction then out at the range? I mean, because actually you have the riverboat, you've got the gambling, but does it all tie in together well? I mean,
I think there's some that feed into the experience here at French Lick. I like to think that golf is a big part of that, but we have an amazing conference facility. We have more conference space than anybody in the Midwest, probably. So we get a lot of corporate meetings, a lot of association meetings. We have horseback riding. We have sporting clays. We have archery. We have our own bowling alley. We have 2 spas, 10 to 12 restaurants, depending on when you're here. So there's a lot here to do. And, I think that makes us different, sets us apart, so to speak, because the gamer can come here and play in the casino. The golfer can come here and play golf. And the wives or whomever can go to the spa or do one of the other activities. So there's a lot to do here.
You guys have any, I mean, since the podcast is called Automation Nation, do you have anything like Top Tracer? Do you have any of those types of things right now, or is it?
We have, we're probably one of the biggest green grass Callaway accounts in the country. We have a Callaway fitting station system here, and of course use TrackMan and their putting analyzer and some of those kind of things. No Top Tracer yet, but that could come.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the courses that I've been to and our solution, because we pick up golf balls. I don't know if you know this about us or not, but we are actually picking up golf balls. And it seems to me like every time I go someplace, they have Top Tracer, So like once they invest in that technology, then they use robots to cut and pick their range. So that's just what I asked. But so some background on yourself then, because I like to, realize that people are more than the industry they've devoted their time to. Do give me some background on your family, maybe your upbringing, and what you do for recreation.
I was born here in French Lick. Went to a small high school over in a neighboring county, 250 kids, 60 in my graduating class. Like I said, didn't go to college. We didn't have a lot of money. Parents were both factory workers. Just never really had the desire to leave this part. I always loved this part of the country. So stayed here. I have one son who, as I said, lives in Los Angeles and works for the medical device side of the Cook Corporation. He's actually a fellow employee. Of course, he worked for me here all during high school and caddied here, and he was our first Evans Scholar to come out of our caddy program at Pete Dye. We've now had 12 of those, so that's a game changer for kids, to be able to get a full ride scholarship as a caddy. Recreationally, I play golf, not as much as I'd like. Just got back from Salina, Kansas. My wife and I and my brother and his son went out to Salina to play in the LPGA Senior Championship, Ladies Championship at Salina Country Club, and we had a pro-am team and actually played with a pro from Modesto, California, Dana Ebster, and had a great time. But I also have a band. My friends and I have a little country western band that we play around the area. And actually, my 83-year-old mother still plays in the band, if you can believe that.
That's actually awesome. So what do you play? What instrument are you the singer?
I play lead guitar and sing a little, and as a guy said, damn little.
I could see just in how you talk, I could picture you having a good singing voice. So that's pretty awesome. So what made you take up an instrument, start playing guitar? When did you start doing that?
My mother was a great piano player and still is. I mean, you'd be amazed at 83 how she can still operate. But took up guitar at 13. I was playing in a band when I was 14. So I've been at it for too many years, probably.
Fantastic. This is one thing I cannot do.
This may be my 50th year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never actually, if I could play any instrument, I would truly like to play piano. I love songs that have piano, but I never took it up at a young age, and I'm 43 now. I just don't really know that this would be the time to start to try to play piano. But I hats off to people that can play instruments. I love music, and I think it's awesome that you can do that. So, and you're doing that with your mom to boot. That's amazing.
It's so different than what I do every day. It's different from the job, and it's almost a complete retreat from what I do for a living.
Yeah. No, I'd say, and honestly, this is why I love podcasts, and this is how I try to kind of steer my podcast, because I love people. I enjoy talking to people. I love learning about people, and these are the things that maybe people wouldn't realize. They'd show up, they'd come to French Lick, they'd see you, and they maybe would not know that this is what you do, and this is a passion of yours. So I'm glad we could bring that out on the show. So I'm sure, you sound like a pretty humble person, maybe, but I want to see what you think your influences have been to kind of bring out the greatness in the club. I mean, I've heard you say owners, different owners you've worked for, but what are some major accomplishments that you kind of help see over the finish line at the club?
Well, I think
the French Lick.
I don't want to put them in any particular order. I mean, I'm probably the proudest of the work that we've done with junior golf. My wife and I started a nonprofit junior golf association back in 1996, along with my brother and his wife. And we've grown that tremendously. We have somewhere around 100 kids a year participating in junior golf here. And this is a small town, 1,900 people. So, to have that many kids involved in golf. Then we have also morphed into a first tee chapter. We have our own first tee chapter here. And, I see a lot of kids who started out in our program that are now, successful business people, successful in the golf business. My golf sales manager, Alex Whiteman, started with us in our junior golf program as just one example. And now he heads up our golf group sales. I think the Evans scholarship thing's important, not only to my son, but to the other 11 kids who maybe would not have had a chance to go to college or a major college, got that chance through the Evans Scholar Foundation. And, through the caddy program, they had a little extra spending money when their parents may not. One of the early stories that I like to talk about is I had a young man who caddied, and he went home. He was a golfer and he knew golf, and he was just a personable kid. And he went home and he told his mom, said, these guys, this foursome, poor caddy, paid me $300. He said, I think they overpaid me. So his mom called me and said, do you think they overpaid him? And I said, well, no, that's probably because he did a good job. And she said, that's more than I make in a week. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, I'm proud of being top golf courses in the state. And yeah, I'm proud of, the fact that I've won awards and all that, but I'm the proudest of the way we've been able to impact kids through golf.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that I enjoy about what I'm doing in automation right now is actually mentoring younger people in this industry and to kind of branch out into the different areas that they want to excel in this industry. But I truly enjoy like watching people grow around me. And it sounds like that's one of your things you probably enjoyed most about your position.
Like I said, we had the junior program. Then I was a high school golf coach here for 11 years and really enjoyed that, and especially if you took a kid who hadn't played much golf, and after hundreds of balls, they finally got one up in the air. The smile that they had, it's hard to replace that.
Yeah. Yeah. So my stepson, Brady, he plays golf. He's on the high school team. And it's hard for me to play golf with him because he exposes all my weaknesses. But what's ironic is he's like turning into my coach. Like when we golf, he'll like be like, "Hey Joe, try to do this," and so that's pretty cool. It's kind of cool to see him teaching me how to actually do this. I played football, so to me, my issue with golf is when I'm having a bad day, I just want to hit it harder, and that actually makes my day even worse. So he's the one that's like, no, just kind of hit it lighter, you'll do better. So he's been teaching me to be better at that.
My son was a good player, and I for his first 14 years I beat him every time, and he should have beaten me a long time before he did, but when he was 14 he beat me, and I think he's been beating me ever since for the most part. So age will do that to you. I always told the old guys who worked around here, they were good players. They'd been at it all their lives, and I'm a new beginner and out there playing skins with them. And I told them, someday you're going to get older and I'm going to get better. So, and it worked.
Yeah. So I'm a pretty competitive person, but anytime my kids are better at something than I am, there's a certain amount of like pride, that it's okay. I'm happy. Like if my daughter does something better than I do, she plays volleyball, and I'm proud of that, and Brady golfs better than I do, I'm proud of that, so.
Well, I knew they would come, and it did. And like I said, it's sort of gratifying to see that, really. Worked hard at something I worked hard with him at. I never really was one of those parents that drove him really hard to be good, but he saw he could do that and carried through with it. So
yeah, sometimes when you drive them too hard, I see a lot of parents do that. They drive their kids so hard they drive them right out of the sport. So the talking about the people I feel like you've mentored, are there some mentors that you've had in your life that you'd like to recognize?
I had some great uh, old school pros. And when I first started working here, I worked in the bag room with a fellow who had caddied here since the 1930s. So he was an older guy, and he had some great stories. Up until 1959, they didn't have golf carts here. They had up to 300 caddies a year. And he liked to tell the story about when the pro brought the carts in, and how the caddies had a revolt. They were driving nails up through the bottom of the wooden bridges, and the carts were hitting them. And the filling station guy across the street made $1 million changing flat golf cart tires. Those kind of stories. That's always a treat. But yeah, him as a guest service person, probably one of the best guys I'd ever seen with a guest. He knew just exactly what that guest was going to look for, and had it before they asked. And then the first pro that really took an interest in me was a fellow named Fred Wampler. Fred was a really, really good player. Back in the 1950s, they thought he was the next Hogan. He won the Los Angeles Open. He was the NCAA champion, 7-time Colorado PGA champion. Spent most of his career at the Denver Country Club. Came here late in life, about 1980, I think, and was here through about 1983 or 4, and passed away. When he died, one of his best friends from the tour days, a guy named Bud Timbrook, came, and he took Fred's spot, and brought with him a fellow from Florida, Jack Coyle, who was on the LSU national championship team back in 50 or 51. So they were old school guys, but they were brought up maybe not with the book smarts that we see today, but they sure had the common sense, and they knew their way around the golf business. And those guys all played a part. When Bud retired, then he recommended me to take his spot.
Awesome. So when did Bud retire then? So when did you take his spot then?
1986.
86.
Mm-hmm.
So is Bud still around, or?
No, he passed away 6 months after he retired.
Wow, that's a shame. I tell you, that's what scares the crap out of me about retirement in general. There's too many stories like that, well, unfortunately.
I tell everybody, well, what happened to Bud? I said, too many cigars.
Well, that could be. So if you were to start all over again, would you do anything different, or are you right where you want to be? Would you tell yourself to change anything?
Oh, somebody asked me that the other day. I said, well, I probably could have made a lot more money had I been willing to move around. But, all in all, not much in the way of regret. I mean, I'm pretty pleased with the way it's gone. And, I'm at the end of it. So it's easy to look back and say, did it work out? Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah. Well, that's a great place to be. I mean, you said at the beginning of this podcast, you love the area. So at the end of the day, there's a certain, sometimes money's not everything. The joy is appreciating and loving the things around you, so it sounds like you're where you wanted to be. So what aspect of the golf business do you find yourself probably most passionate about when we're talking about the business end of it?
Of course, I've had to see things differently now that I am the guy that's at the higher level. I'm looking over all the things. Every walk into one of the operations, I think, how's this going? What can I change? How can I improve? But I think the part that intrigues me the most about the business is the marketing, probably, and the merchandising. This place, a lot of people didn't know existed. I mean, we started down a path in 2006 to bring us to where we are today. We did that through, a lot of hospitality shown to the PGA professionals. I've yet to charge a PGA professional who's not competing in an event for a room. I mean, we invite PGA pros to come down and bring their spouses. I know how hard they work. I know the hours they put in. If we can be that place that they can come to and get some relaxation, we're going to be it. And hopefully in return, they'll send some members down for a trip, and, the word will get around, and it's worked out. I mean, the Pete Dye course when we built it. The green fee, we set it at $350. It's not a cheap date. And, we thought if we could play 30 rounds a day and keep it fairly casual, that it would be a good thing. We're averaging 100 rounds a day. So we did something right somewhere. I'm not sure how we did it, but we did something right. And, I also thought in the beginning that it'd be a bucket list golf course and that people would play it once. We have people play it 7 or 8 times a year. They fly in their private jets and land at our local airport and, come spend the day with us. So I think the marketing, how we got the word out, tournament operations, merchandising, all that played into my overall view of the golf business.
So that's actually amazing, because I will say, coming from, you have to understand about me, I honestly, if it wasn't for automation, I likely would not feel like I'm even in the golf industry, right? And when I came into the golf industry, I was always so amazed at how hospitable, I guess I would say, like the golf industry is. Like when you just brought up the whole fact of, PGA members, you get to stay for free. It's, you guys are such a tight knit community, of professionals. That's how I'll put it. And I think that's awesome. I mean, hats off to you guys that you do that. And it sounds like it is paying off, because it's not a destination golf once and go type of place. I believe there's so many people that love the game of golf that if they find a good place that treats them well and it's beautiful, that they'll come to that destination time after time.
We have groups that repeat. In fact, in the spring, I have a group this was their 54th consecutive year. Now, granted, none of the original members are here, but they've carried on a tradition, and this is their 54th year to pick us as their destination. And we have tons of groups that come year after year after year. So, that's really how I think you gauge how you're doing,
So
in that way.
In that 54 years, though, how many times do you think French Lick has evolved or turned over? Meaning, there has to be something in those 54 years that's changed, that's allowed you guys to evolve with those people to keep them coming back, right?
Tell you what didn't change: the hospitality of the Indiana folks, Southern Indiana especially. That didn't change. And I think even though we had taped together curtains and steam heat in the rooms and carpet all ripped up on the floors and bathrooms that worked sometimes, and sometimes the showers were cold, if we hadn't been nice people, I don't think we could have kept our customer base. But I think the hospitality, you can't replace it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that goes a long way, and that is true. People work for, it's like, you can look at it all. Customers gravitate towards nice businesses and nice people. People gravitate towards great leaders and nice people. At the end of the day, they probably saw that you appreciated them as a customer as much as they appreciated you as a place to golf. So yeah, I think that's well put. So what do you think some of the toughest times in business, where I feel like you might hit on it? Maybe it's when Trump filed bankruptcy and all that work you did, but what were some of the toughest times, and what did you learn from those tough times?
That was one of my low times, because, Trump was an absolute master at public opinion. And we were able to get that license. Oh, let me give you history. In the early 90s, the Indiana legislature granted 11 gaming licenses in the state of Indiana. All of them had to be on water. So they granted our license to a man-made lake south of town, about 8 miles, controlled by the Corps of Engineers. So, long story short, all 10 of those other licenses got open and granted and located. Corps of Engineers doesn't allow gaming on their water. So we had a license that was basically worthless. So a group formed. We're in Orange County, and a group of citizen lobbyists formed. And we worked the legislature for 5 or 6 years, wearing our orange shirts and passing out oranges and orange golf balls, whatever we could think of. And we had a lady here, Geneva Street was her name. The head of our legislature at that time was a veterinarian, and she had tried to get in to see him in his office in Indianapolis, couldn't get in. So she made an appointment to take her dog to Columbus to him to see the dog. So that kind of thing. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. But through all that, we finally persuaded him to move the license. We had a public referendum, and it went 3-1 in favor of gaming here. Well, Trump, being the master of public opinion that he is, enlisted the services of all those citizen lobbyists to help convince us to pick Trump. And when Trump came forward with his offer, it was a $250 million offer. I mean, the next one to him was about 100. So had we not picked Trump as the operator, I'd have been run out of town. But then that year went by with no operator and Trump going through the bankruptcy thing. So that was probably the lowest point, or one of the lowest points. And then, there were other times. I mean, whenever ownership changed, I'm the guy that's here, and I'm thinking, they're going to bring their own people in. They're going to clean house. And a lot of times they did, but somehow or another, I ducked and dodged and survived it. A couple of times I called my wife and said, well, start packing because we're probably going to be gone. But it always worked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't spent a ton of time with you, but likable people tend to just stick around, and you're passionate too. I mean, it's, even as I hear you tell the stories about how you got started, honestly, Dave, you remind me a lot of in one of my landscaping companies, my general manager currently drove me home from a Ford dealership. And when he got me to my house, he saw one of my dump trucks and said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I own a landscaping business." And he asked me for a job, and he's my GM now, but I always say he bleeds that company as it's blue. It's actually a landscape company that's blue, or blue coloring. But I say to people, he bleeds Langton blue, because I know he cares about my company as much as I care about it, So it's likely, maybe you haven't identified it yourself, but it's likely why you stick around, because I feel like the owners probably see you care about that club as much as they would want anybody to, So, no, I just met you, but this is what I'm picking up from the call. So,
well, the company that I work for now, the Cook folks, Bill Cook is like the richest man in Indiana. Is worth, well, his son now, because Bill passed away, but he's worth about $13 billion. So don't you think for $13 billion, they could go out and find somebody to take this position? There'll be a lot bigger name, et cetera. So I feel pretty privileged to be able to stay here through all that, knowing that. I mean, they haven't gone elsewhere, and, I'm happy of that.
Yeah. Well, you're giving them a value, so I don't know. I don't want to make anybody mad if you share this to them, but maybe they should be paying you a little bit more money, because I mean, it came out of my mouth, not Dave's.
Well, if golf keeps doing like it's doing right now, maybe so.
Yeah. So speaking of times, I mean, I feel like, did you guys see what most golf saw with, once COVID hit? Did you guys see more rounds and more work, but with less people, or is that not affecting you down there, being such a small town?
It only took a pandemic to bring golf back. Remember, I don't rely on my local population, so we had to be a safe place. First of all, we had to prove that we were safe, and we went. We had a really widespread effort to be safe. No staffing to speak of during those days. I think I went 100 days open to close at one of the golf courses and washed carts and did the whole bit. We weren't real busy, but then we started to get busy, and we've broken records every month this year.
So then how have you been doing on staffing during all of that?
Well, I sit in our executive meetings, and I hear people talk about the housekeeping, how we're behind and need staff, and we do. Food and beverage, we do. Somehow or another, I've managed to have people. We have not struggled for staff. The hardest part of staffing here is probably assistant golf professionals, because we're a small town and because there's not a lot of nightlife. that's a bit of a struggle, but the closer to here I can hire them from, the better, because they're sort of used to the smaller towns. And right now I've got a great staff. I mean, I wouldn't trade them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that, I mean, people enjoy working outside. So if you can find a great place to work and be outside sometimes, I feel like that likely helps, even when you're here in housekeeping and food and beverage, So, but I also think people need to be nicer about,
Especially retirees. Retirees love to play golf. So I rely a lot on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's amazing that you guys are actually doing okay, doing well with the staffing. So has your vision, you know, has your vision as a leader at French Lick changed, as you've evolved as a leader? Did you like for instance, like has your general direction always kind of been the same to where you want to take French Lick, and do you see it changing from where it is right now?
Well, it was, 15 years ago, it was absolutely impossible to take French Lick where I wanted to see it, and never really dreamed where we'd wind up. But I always had that hope. And I think that, even after the Cook folks bought the place and we started to upgrade, it was hard for me to get my mind off of the bottom line so much. I think that's been for anybody who's worked for a larger management company or corporation, bottom line's important. Don't get me wrong. And I still try to provide that. But I think the question sort of falls back to, if you build it, they'll come, or if they come, you'll build it. We built it first, and we spent the money, and we made the sacrifices. And I went through 8-9 years of losing a lot of money, but now the whole thing's turned. And so I think that effort that we put in to be fair and to be hospitable and, go the extra mile, spend the extra few dollars, I think it paid off.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it is. So how, like, do you guys, I see a lot of clubs in my own company too, but like some of the clubs I visited, they're big on core values. Does your club have core values you spread down to your people, or?
Oh, sure. I think, all companies have that. I think it's harder for some to live by than others.
Yeah.
We try to live. Bill Cook always told me that a lot of people do things right, but a lot of people don't do the right thing. So that's kind of where I am. I'm going to always do the right thing. It's
I like that. That's
hard. It's hard sometimes. I mean, it really is. It's hard. And I've just hired a head golf professional at one of the courses, and this person had worked for a management company. And, we had a situation where we had a rain out, and this pro said, well, we got to charge them. I said, no, we can't charge them. Well, they played 7 holes, and we're not going to charge them. It's fair not to charge them. And we didn't. And I think those kind of little things, being fair is a big one.
well, because there's no doubt about the fact that those people will be back. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about golf, I mean, they only played 7 holes. So it's not even like they got the full experience, and then if they're happy when they're back, since you have food and beverage and other opportunities for them to spend money, that a happy consumer will always spend more money. So yeah, I mean, I think your decision was spot on.
But the key to that whole thing, though, is to have the backing of the owner. Their core values allowed me to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's important. And actually, I always like to ask about the core values, because you brought up a good point. I mean, it's one thing to have them, but it's another thing to actually operate by them, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, sometimes you go places and they've got stuff written on a wall, or but you can tell by the way they're treating people, it's
Sure.
not getting passed down. So yeah, no, I agree with you. So what aspect of let me back up one. So are there any disruptive things you guys are trying to do in the industry, or do you not really have to because you've almost turned into that like destination? I mean, you guys are who you are, and you don't have to disrupt anything.
Well, no, we still look for ways. I mean, just a little example. I had years ago, foot golf came around, and we had a 9-hole golf course here that was underutilized and not very good conditions. So we started doing foot golf. We did about, I don't know, $50,000 in foot golf a year. Kids loved it. The problem was they were on the golf course. When the golf course got in better shape and people actually wanted to play it, we started having a little better clientele of golfers. The foot golf got in the way. The golfers didn't like the noise and the kids running around. So we had a little 3-acre area over here that was in a floodplain. And I'm thinking, the short courses are really popular in golf right now, like the Cradle down at Pinehurst and some of those places. Why not do a short foot golf course? So I did a 14-hole walking course. The longest hole is like 100 yards long. And we run them through there like crazy. I mean, we didn't see one decline in revenue. We've got a lot of happier golfers. So those kind of little things didn't cost a lot.
Explain foot golf to me. I know frisbee golf, but I've never heard of foot golf.
Well, you mentioned your daughter's a soccer player, so
no, volleyball. She's a volleyball player.
Okay, yeah, volleyball. But actually, golf played with a soccer ball. We have 22-inch cups and pins, and you tee off and you kick the ball, and that's your drive, and then you hit your next one, and then you roll it in. So it's golf played with a soccer ball. No clubs, no lessons, no stress. So it's very popular here.
So this sounds, I mean, if you were closer to me, this sounds like a perfect like corporate outing. Actually, because
great family outing too.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's actually so my friend Gary owns Bull Valley Golf Club. I actually live on Bull Valley Golf Course. And there's a few lots and there's some stuff, and he's always thinking about, I literally have to tell Gary, he's got to figure out how to do this. I think that's a great idea. It's, I don't know. I feel like I'm overwhelmed with like, I want to play. Actually, if I'm in Indiana, I might have to come down to a few people and play.
You'll have to check it out on YouTube.
Yeah, I will. I'll look that up. So, I mean, you said your son did some golf, but I mean, you golf with your wife. So I was actually going to say, how's your relationship with your family? Do you have a good balance? But it sounds like you're actually golfing with your wife, so she's into golf too. So I'm going to probably skip past that question.
Well, you better not.
Okay.
We were married 32 years before she picked up a golf club. Now she plays 5 days a week. So, she didn't understand what the draw was, and she didn't understand about it. But, I was doing the golf business when I met her. So we've been married now 36 years. And the last 4, she's played golf, and she's pretty good, really. She breaks 90, and she hits the ball. So it's been a good thing. My son, had he not played golf, I wouldn't have seen as much of him. But when I built my home here, I built a mile from the golf course. So it's right between the 3 golf courses. I can run over there for a minute anytime I need to, birthdays, whatever. And didn't really miss a lot. So I think the fact that I didn't have an hour drive to get to work was really helpful. 2 minutes is pretty easy.
Yeah, no, that's great. So do you guys have anything you guys are working on? Any new exciting projects that you want to plug or you can talk about, or not really?
Well, probably the biggest thing that's right in our immediate future here is we're hosting the largest Epson Tour event in the history of the LPGA. They start here next week. $350,000 purse, $50,000 to the winner. This is the qualifying tour for the LPGA. So some really great players will be here. We've hosted the event 4 times prior over at the Donald Ross Golf Course. Patty Tabatanicut, who won the, I think it was the Du Maurier maybe last year, won a major championship on the LPGA Tour, actually won our tournament. So, it's a good tournament, and we're talking to some other people about a pretty big event. So I think that's our biggest thing. I'd love to build another 9 holes at our 9-hole facility. That would be one thing. I'd love to have some golf lodges to sleep 4 to 8 people, because guys love to congregate in the evening. It's not as easy in a hotel, but those kind of things, I think that would be on my radar.
So, man, so this is not what I'm trying to do on this podcast, but look up, after this call, look up Green Magic Homes. If you're looking into golf lodging, I think they fit right into golf. Their house is covered in grass. You should just check them out if you're looking into lodging.
You being a landscape guy, I could see why you'd like that.
Yes. Well, I'm actually building one for myself up in Door County. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, I have a little quick story. So I went to have you ever been to Door County, Wisconsin?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I went to Door County, Wisconsin a few years ago, and I'm a pretty tall guy. You can't tell from the show, but I'm 6'4". And I saw the moss on all the rocks in Bailey's Harbor, and it reminded me of the movie The Hobbit. So I Googled tall Hobbit houses, and this company, Green Magic Homes, comes up, and long story short, this company calls me back like a week later, and I tell them I want somebody to build one of these houses up here. And they're like, we don't have any builders in the United States. And I'm like, well, where do you build? And they're like, well, they're pretty much a Cat 4 hurricane rating out of the box, and we build them on islands, And I said, well, we got to build one up there. So I figured out a way to build one. So you should check them out. I think you'll think they're pretty interesting for your course. So anyways, with that story, I think this is a good spot. We're coming up on our hour here. At the end of the day, you've got a long time. You've been there at French Lick for a long, long time. So what do you want your legacy to be there? Or what do you think you're going to be best known as? What
Gosh, I don't know. The guy that hung around, maybe.
or got kept around through all the changes, But yeah, I mean.
Well, I think, like I said, the kid thing's probably the big one. That's probably the biggest one.
Awesome.
Anybody with the money that was spent here, almost anybody could have done the job, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, Dave, you've been a great guest. I appreciate you coming on the show. Hopefully you appreciated the time as much as I appreciated it. And I wish you guys great luck, and hopefully this is not the last time we'll ever talk. Hopefully I'll run into you again someday.
Get out to the Midwest, the door's open.
Awesome. Sounds great.